the big juice.
I mean, maybe.
I think I know how Matt feels.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another podcast video. We're gonna do movies today. Movies aren't really talked about, so we want to shed some light on that. And today we have three awesome guests. Above me is, why don't you introduce yourself? Oh, that being my mother. I guess we're probably all in a different pattern on my screen. So
maybe you meant metaphorically. I am above.
Exactly. Yeah.
Welcome. Hi, I'm this guy's mom. His blood mother or child. He's my blood child, something like that.
Yeah.
And I do love
Throwback
movies and film, and so it'll be fun for me to talk to these youngsters about their opinions and such.
I'm like 60 years old, but
I wasn't gonna say it, but
all right, Aaron, tell the people about yourself real quick.
Howdy, I'm back. The folks, the people, the fans asked. They wanted me back so bad, so here I am by popular demand. I've got some topics ready to go. Let's do it.
Awesome. And Treyway, let the people know what's up.
Well, hi there. I'm Trey. Some know me as the king of movies. In some circles, I haven't given myself that title. Other people have given it to me, but I'm just relaying the information, of course. And I couldn't be on camera today because of a horrible disfiguration I suffered at my job at the chocolate factory. So I'll just be here in audio form today.
Okay.
Also, you're pause, cut the comedy, your mic and stuff.
I think
my
mom, is there? I think, mom, would it be possible if you close the window in front of you? I think an airplane went by or something, and then it was like really loud, or like the sliding glass door.
I thought you meant the window on the computer.
No.
I was like,
or just like part way.
Oh.
I think the kamikazing plane was kind of going over Trey's voice, but for those who did not hear, Trey got in a accident at work and he became even uglier than usual. So if you want to see what he looks like, here's a picture on screen, and now you have an image of what he looks like in mind. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about movies. We all have few different prompts to talk about. All our letterboxes will be in the description, so if you want to judge us, look at those and get a feel. But we're just gonna bop around and see where we go with this. Does anyone have a burning topic they want to start off with, or I could start? I have some written.
I could start us off. I think
this
is a decent starting one. How would you say, because I'm like a very analytical dude, I'm constantly thinking about stuff. How would you say when you watch a movie, are you like, do you just kind of, let it wash over you? How do you, like, I'm very much like thinking about it, and like the second the screen or the credits roll, I'm like, I don't even know, just like thinking all about it, trying to like kind of analyze. And I guess what you would say, I try to understand it, which sometimes can get in the way. Like some movies aren't really meant to be understood. But yeah, how would you say you approach that?
Could you rephrase the question again?
So there was a list on Letterboxd that I saw that was like, what was it called? It was like, don't understand, just feel, or something like that. Right? There's like kind of some movies that are like more about like the emotional experience, and like, there's going to be just a lot of parts of the movie that aren't really there to like, make connections and like, oh, like you know, you can't really read it as like a text or whatever, but it's like it's more trying to evoke certain feelings, like it's like an experience rather than like I don't know what else you would say. So like I tend to do kind of like I with those movies that's usually hard for my brain to like because I'm trying to look at like see the connections that are being made. I'm trying to like you know just understand it. And sometimes like for example, I watched a Tarkovsky movie, Solaris, and like while I knew that wasn't what I was going for, I still um yeah, I couldn't tap into that like mindset. So like I guess the question was, is that like yeah, when you watch a movie, are you like trying to understand or yeah, how do you view that, I guess?
I think it depends on the type of movie. I think that really good ones you can feel and you can also analyze it and be like, dang, you know, the way it started was telling the story. Or, you know, the more you think about it, you're like, oh, the first 30 seconds actually told the whole plot, but you didn't know that till you went further in. So I guess the way I view it is based on what the movie is. I mean, if you watch a movie like Solaris and you're not thinking, I don't know why, you know, you're watching Solaris, but you can really get immersed in a scene and a really like pretty philosophical movie like that. So, and at the same time, get way more out of it by being like, oh wow, you know, think about what this happened or how he set that up or why did he edit it that way or whatever. So I like to think I can do both.
Hmm. Interesting.
I would definitely say that's true, and it also kind of depends on how you want to watch or approach movies. Where for me, I want to be able to get into the state where it's almost like the movie is watching me, if that makes sense, where it's feeding me more information than I'm trying to like pull out of it. So I kind of appreciate sometimes where like I am not necessarily like conscious during the movie, but like every step that the movie takes feeds into itself. So it's not like I'm turning my brain off, but like it's goes to a point in motion where I don't have to like be a critical thinker while I'm watching, but I'm just thinking about like, oh, what's the next thing that's going to happen? So every movie is not, oh, I'm going to be on the verge of my seat, but I think that's the state that I want to be in, and I think that's when movies are most pleasant, where everything just happens and I don't necessarily have to think, even if it is a deeper movie. And I think that does happen with some Tarkovsky stuff for me, at least, where you're just like, okay, I just want to watch it unfold, and I don't have to be a critical thinker right now, maybe afterwards, but I let the movie watch me. So
Interesting.
I think Matt certainly rings true with his sentiment there. I guess yeah, I kind of watch it or go into a movie watching it, hoping to just kind of let it unfold, but also understand it in tandem. I think maybe what's actually more important for me on the initial watch is how do I connect with the movie and how does the movie connect with me? You know, and on what level does that happen? Like last night, I watched Tokyo Story for the first time, and I didn't connect exactly with, I guess, the format of it initially, but it's once I guess the story and the values of the characters started to kind of, I guess, become more apparent to me. That's when I began to sort of connect like themes and all these things going on with it. So I guess that's what I would have to say for that.
yeah, I
guess
think
it's something.
I was going to go on to a different topic, but you can, if you had a continuance.
Just it's not a movie, but I sort of got up on that craft country stuff, and that is an example of something like where I was just like, I'm just gonna watch this, I'm entertained. And then as we went along, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of fun, you know, little stuff going on here. And so like I feel like to appreciate something on one level is one thing, and then to get more out of it, and it's different because it's a TV series or whatever. But that's the first thing that I thought of was like you can enjoy something one way, and then you can get so much more out of it paying more attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. It really varies, and I think one of the kind of starting questions I had to bounce off was like, what even is a movie, or how would you guys define that? Because I think the line is being blurred a lot more with the kind of ease of scaling up production, especially for TV shows, and the style things are being made, where it's like, like a lot of TV shows are higher production quality now, and they're just really, really long soap opera type movies, instead of just like a sit down and watch one like start to finish story. So would you guys consider something like a Game of Thrones kind of a thing, like a movie, or you Breaking Bad boys are? I feel like that's almost like it has a lot of movie like elements. I've never watched it, but do you guys have like strong definitions of like what is allowed to be a movie and what's not, or where do y'all draw the line?
I mean, while I do think it's like interesting to consider like definitions, I don't really like at the end of the day, it's more just I don't know, like we kind of know what it is when we see it, right? Like a movie, when we're talking about it, usually is like a single story, as opposed to even if a TV show was or a TV episode was an hour long, like it's part of the larger whole. Um, and you kind of mentioned, like it used to be more about production value as well, where obviously like Breaking Bad and even like Game of Thrones, like clearly that's becoming much more normal to see higher like they look a lot more like they have like that cinema-esque quality, or cinematic, but I don't really I think it's interesting to think about, but I don't like getting down to like what uh whether it is or isn't or whatever. I don't Yeah, I guess like the semantics of it don't really I don't really concern myself with it.
I would say the same, where yeah, probably the definition doesn't really matter, but I do think it's interesting where like it seems like it's almost always boils down to like a time thing, where like I don't really care about TV shows at all, but I may have like a as well or more interesting experience watching one, even though maybe I associate like a certain idea of like what a TV show is to it. So I guess like I'm fine to say I like movies because they can all be experienced in one day. And so like I guess it really depends on your definition of like one day or like how manageable something is, but I think that's like the rule for me. Like if you can watch it all in one day, then I would call it a movie. Maybe even if you were like to binge all 7 hours of something, then I think I'd be comfortable calling that a movie to like a weird regard. But
I'd say I'm a lot more traditional to me. I like that's the point of kind of words and definitions like that. Like a movie is a single sitting, a self-contained story. Like I love that show Atlanta. I don't know if it's gonna come back again, but I mean that was 2 seasons and the episodes were very cinematic and they could a lot of them, maybe all of them, could stand on their own. You got more out of them, from knowing the characters and what's going on in the arc. But to me, that's still a TV series, so I think I'm a little more picky about that.
Yeah, I think the lines are really, really becoming more and more blurred these days because it's like shows are like there's a standard for a lot of television shows these days to look even more so like movies. And then conversely, you have movies that don't even look like movies anymore, or the standards of what we hold those to. But yeah, it's kind of weird to think about exactly what the criteria is that separates them, because the one thing that would come to mind to me, or to me, like in similar way to how Matt was thinking, was that this whole self-contained story and being able to watch it in one sitting, like I think that's about the only the only thing I can think about in terms of separating those two, because I often like I watched a show called Mr. Robot for a while, and that really like each episode flows into each other in such a way that it would feel like a movie if you watched it all in one sitting. In a similar way to the latest season of Twin Peaks, there's been a lot of like uh, debate about that on Twitter. Like it's almost a meme at this point. Is like, is it a movie or is it a
Mhm.
TV show? So it's going to be a constant debate that I don't think anybody really ever wins.
Well, do you like that
True.
movie, The Office?
Um,
I don't know. I'm picky about that stuff, but it's fine.
That is one of Trey's favorite movies. A lot of people don't know that about him.
I love The Office. It's great. So wonderful.
Who else has a question?
Okay, all right. I got a question here.
Yeah, right.
What genre are you most attracted to, and why do you think you're attracted to it?
I don't. I guess yeah. I don't really understand. Like, I feel like it's weird. Like, I just like if looks like a compelling story, then I want to watch it. Like, I don't. There's nothing about any particular genre, and this isn't even just for movies. It's like books or TV shows. Like, I mean, I get that some people, like a lot of people, do find different things more interesting, but like I'll watch anything if it has some good stuff there. So
I would say science fiction, but my husband loves science fiction, and he will watch anything if it has a robot or AI, and I'll be like, no, you need to like tell me like questions. You have to give me questions, and then I like science fiction. I don't like science fiction that like gives you answers, and so like I hate Star Wars, so that's just a complete waste of time. So, but I like really, I guess I like science fiction has really big questions about what it means to be human. So I think a lot of people might be like, well, what's the point of that? That's not science fiction. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what science fiction is to be, is putting the question back in it. So that would be mine.
Yeah, I feel like that's like kind of like the pure sci-fi, right? Is like, yeah, like 2001 is like right, like the example of that probably. Yeah, I would agree.
That's kind of weird to think about in terms of like what is like sciencey enough, because that makes me think about a lot of like art style films where that's like they're more like scientific experiments. It's not like science of the future asking or answering questions about humanity, but I think in a lot of them they take like a scientific approach to making artwork, and then they ask questions about like what does it mean to be human, but in a very different way, and they play on different tropes of film and technology of the time. So I would almost argue that like a lot of those art house style films are like a different, those are like real life science fiction, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, like the big science fiction thing is always like, what if? And that's what if? What if I filmed it this way? What if I started at the end? What if whatever? I would totally agree with you on that idea. What about you, Trey?
I guess if I'm thinking about my favorite films of all time, probably like drama. But then again, that's something that bleeds into so many other things. Like I would say, like I feel like if you were to ask me this question years ago, I would have said science fiction. And I still really do love science fiction for pretty much those reasons that you discussed. It's kind of the grand question of, I guess, yeah, we have been given this existence, and what are the possibilities of it? What lies beyond our perception, of our current existence, which is the reason why I really loved this film called Ad Astra that I watched like a few months ago, or a month or two ago, because I felt like that touched upon it in such a really like kind of a humanistic way, but also with just enough of like your typical science fiction bells and whistles to make it like such a interesting movie, I guess. But drama is. Oh, were you gonna say something? Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah, drama has always been a thing for me, I guess, because I find a lot of relatability in it and also just curiosity in it. Like there have been plenty of moments of just absolute like craziness in my life that is interesting to see like reflected in a fictional form, yeah, or go beyond like, okay, what if things were even crazier than my situation? So it's stuff like that, yeah.
I oh, I just so I guess I would probably say drama now that I think about it, but I guess the reason why I don't is because it's such a weird I mean everything. I mean I know when you say drama, I know what you're talking about, but it still is like everything is drama. Like that's what we're watching in any genre, right? So like, but yeah, I guess I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like it's a weird genre, but yeah, that's what I yeah.
I'm thinking like Her or The Lobster. Yes, it's a drama because it's a conflict. Right? Somebody wanted, but then somebody just ups the ante on all of it, and that's why I love those movies because yeah, you could say those are dramas and they're personal relationships and whatever, but then they're just so much completely thrown out of any run of the mill plot. And so that's what I like. That's to me like maybe it's not science fiction to a lot of people, but to me that's definitely in that field.
For sure.
I was gonna say that. Well, as Trey was speaking, I was gonna say like it almost sounds like his drama is what you were talking about of a movie being compelling, Aaron, where like what you like about movies is that it makes it engaging for you, or you get something further out of the characters. And I guess that'd be almost it'd be weird to say like, oh, these are like my requirements for liking a movie, and then you could almost like cross analyze and then these are just the styles of movies that have that show up most, like, oh, if you like drama, then you're gonna like these thrillers that have a lot of drama or something like that. But I guess it'd almost be the interesting to kind of like ask like what settings do you like where movies take place in or something like that, because that I think that removes the preference of just like, oh, what do you enjoy in a film. I would probably say most people enjoy the drama or the banter between characters or whatever, but like, do you guys think certain settings lead more or less to that? Or because I almost feel like, you've seen movies take place in a city, and those can be any movie, right? Or do you think they lend better to being, oh, like a drama works a lot better in a city just because you can have such a variety of characters and it makes for a cool backdrop? Or does like an action movie work better for a city because like there's a lot of disposable people you can kill or something like that? So do you guys have like a favorite setting movies take place in that may favor something that you enjoy in films overall?
I think the urban setting is always going to be like a certified like banger ingredient for anything I like. Because yeah, it just there's so many possibilities in like a bustling city or something like that, and especially I guess when you pair that also with like water or like being at sea, like both of those things, those breed such interesting ingredients for I guess like conflict between other humans or uh, issues that we face in our lives that can be on any level.
So are sci-fi movies better in space or on like a planet or like a city for you guys?
I'm just gonna kind of go slightly different before I answer that. Like, it doesn't really matter to me the setting. The movie makers like make it look like. I know you're not a huge Wes Anderson fan, but like Moonrise Kingdom, that just has a cool look, in the Hotel Budapest and the whatever that one was on the train or whatever. Like that color, and even something like the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which I just watched. I wouldn't normally like just chat about that, but like it's part the set that they build to make. It's part of like the color use. It's part of the real stuff. Um, so that was kind of one of my first thoughts. Is like, I think really great movie makers can, or look at like Tarkovsky. Like, I don't even know where some of those take, but like, there's a nature scene, and then there's a planet, like just, but it looks amazing, and the colors are amazing, and so that was kind of my thing. And then for me, science fiction, it needs to be. I need to be able to put myself in it as a human, but it also needs to be uncomfortable. And so, like, like a Blade Runner or something, like when that came out, originally people were like, whoa, it's like LA and New York, right? But at the same time, it was not real and recognizable. So there's something, not necessarily like an uncanny valley, but something where, like, I don't like fantasy. Like, if you give me a dragon, I'll be like, oh God, no, I don't want to see that. But if you give me something like a little bit Harry Potter, where it's like, there's someone there who is the fish out of water, then I can relate to it and be like, whoa, what? This person doesn't know what's going on either. It's kind of exciting. So it's a lot of like the magic touch that somebody has who's really good at storytelling.
For sure. I do think with sci-fi, there's something, like, to answer specifically your question, Matt, about like whether it's a planet or like in space, like there's just, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but like space and like just, the infinite black just expanse is like, it's too, like, how do you not, if you're doing a sci-fi, like, that's just so, I don't know, it's like, I can't even explain it, like, you just, it creates a feeling and like makes you, it's hard not to think about it when, like a character is, floating through it, or, like Trey, you said Ad Astra, like when they're on the surface of the moon and like behind them and all around them is just, barely, I don't even know if the moon, I don't think the moon has an atmosphere, like it's, yeah, it really, I was going to say grounds, but it really, like, that's not the right word. Like, it, like, for the characters that are there, like, it, yeah, I guess it focuses on them more.
Like a rival or something where you can get that enormity of some.
Oh, sorry, you cut off a little bit in the middle, but.
Oh, I was thinking about, I think it's a rival. Did you see that?
Yeah. Yes, we saw.
That's the first thing I thought, like that enormity. Is that what you're talking about? Like someplace so enormous we can't comprehend it as a person? Does that help you as a moviegoer to see like, whoa?
I guess I was more talking in terms of like if I was the filmmaker, like, yeah, and I had like I was gonna, wanted to go into a sci-fi or try, the sci-fi route. Like, if a script came to me, I don't know, there's just something there. I think there's just something so compelling and so, like, I don't know, like, it's too perfect for like that pure sci-fi you and I were talking about. Like, yeah, it's like almost like not a setting, but it is, right? Like, it's literally nothing, but it's everything.
Yeah, I get it.
Well, in a way, it's almost analogous to like being set at sea. That's kind of like what we. It's like just the extreme version of that.
Right. Yeah, somebody's unmoored from everything that we know. I have a question here that I wonder how you guys feel about musicals. Abomination, or is there some use for a musical?
Well, we know how Matt feels. I do. I mean, it is kind of goofy, right? You kind of like when you're going into a musical, like in a non-musical, like you can kind of buy into it more, right? Like it's just going to be people talking and doing stuff and whatever. But like inherent in the genre is that like just a totally unrealistic, like people are going to break out in a huge dance number, right? Like there's just no, like going into it, you have to just accept and like see the, just like all right, like it's gonna happen and just have fun with it or whatever. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't really write it off or not off. I just, like, for example, me and Trey watched La La Land and I loved that movie. Um, so like if it's done well, then I'm all there.
Tway, what's your stance?
Oh, you don't want to talk? Okay.
Well, for those that don't
think
know,
I
you
know
can
how
watch
that
my disc track on musicals right here. But we'll hear Trey, and then I can rant about it for the next half hour. But you can go.
Well, I guess yeah. Like, I feel like I haven't seen enough movie musicals to super like be like I hate them or like I love them. One thing I will say is that like I mean, so my sister did a lot of musicals in high school, and so I had a lot of experience going to those when I was younger. And I didn't like not hate or I didn't not enjoy those. But I think there was a certain part of it that wore thin on me, like just like, man, why do they got to make this part a song or like why do they got to do this? Right? Like, but then again, the other thing to remember there is that I was a kid, so of course I'm bored and sitting there like I want to go play video games or something. Um, in terms of movie musicals that I've seen, I know I've seen. Well, I guess a bunch of the Disney things are musicals, but I haven't really watched a Disney movie in some time. Um, I'd have to rewatch some of those. I know Mamma Mia is the most recent thing that I've. Aaron and I watched that at a gathering, and
A slumber party.
a slumber party. Yes, wonderful slumber party. We all had
Was
ice
that
cream.
a
And cotton
Mensa
candy.
meeting?
Yeah. And yeah, there's things I love and things that I hate. Like, I guess, actually, no, hate's a strong word. I think hate does not belong in this conversation. But, yeah, Mamma Mia, I think it's a good example of a movie musical. I think that's like the one that most people will think of when they conjure that up. Besides Disney movies, and I think it has just enough charm in it, like to make you enjoy the songs. Like I don't know if Aaron would agree with that, but I think like it there was enough there in terms of like characters and I guess goofiness to just make it all like okay, I'm on board with this. They're just singing ABBA songs the whole time, whatever. Let's go. So yeah, I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but I don't hate them, and it depends. I think if the goofy factor is played up enough, then I'm all on board. If it's played super duper straight, then it's like, okay, I'm not really for this. I haven't seen Les Mis, but I fear that might be the case, and I might not like it because of that.
Yeah.
when you, oh sorry,
I
I was just I was just going to say that when you said like I guess with La La Land, for example, like it is played very straight. I'm so here. And if it's done well, like I said, I'm fine with it. Like it's cool, but there is part of me like, oh, okay, we have to like leave the. Well, I guess so. If it's done well, you're not like it's going to progress the story, through the song, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of both. Like I'm a little like, all right, I'd rather kind of see, a more traditional progression, but if they do it right, and like Trey said, like I mean, Mamma Mia is kind of, it's Mamma Mia, but it's been a while since I've seen, yeah, a musical. There's not really a ton of them, but yeah, there is. It's a little like, like if you're leaning in your chair, it's like, oh, all right, like let's just get this over with. But yeah, it can also be fun and done well.
Mamma Mia, I think, is a good example that you brought up, Trey. Kind of like Aaron was saying, where it really depends on like what do you want to watch, and in a lot of movies, like I prefer to just have people talk in a scene and have them have like an actual dialogue than the music part of it. But if you're watching Mamma Mia, it's like, okay, they go to an island to have a wedding and that's it, and it's like, okay, well, there wasn't going to be a crazy action scene or like a really dramatic argument in this movie anyway, so like who cares what's going to happen? Like we all know that the big music numbers are like what we're here to see. But and I have not watched Hamilton, mind you, but if they're going to argue about things that are seemingly more serious, or like arguing about the semantics of laws or how these freedoms should be expressed, it feels like, okay, it is impressive that they can put it into this form, but when you're putting it into a style of music that I don't really enjoy in the first place, then it just kind of feels ridiculous and kind of fluffed up for no reason for me. And I mean, that's not to say that music can't present an amazing message, and there are plenty of songs that I do like that, even if they are like preachy, they have something that I do care about as the theme. And it just, I think it, for musicals, for me, it feels like whatever the theme is gets muddled up in the kind of ridiculousness of everything else that they try and orchestrate. And then if I'm already have a bias against the music, then it's like, okay, I don't like any of this then. So I think it's hard to, yeah, watch a movie like that for me, because there's already like, well, if I didn't enjoy at least the cool aspect of it, then who's to care, right? Like that's probably why some people don't like action movies, where it's like, okay, I don't like how the action was already presented, because they like, oh, it's just cars and stuff blowing up. But like if you already like watching cars and stuff blow up for the millionth time, then like you're gonna like that regardless of how it's presented. And I think that's the same thing of like they're just two sides of the same coin of you have these tropes, and then if you already like it, then you're probably gonna like it already, and if you don't like it, then you won't. So I think I already have like a certain amount of that bias, and I'd rather just like watch a movie play out instead of it be wound up into a song, I suppose. So
do you
I
think
think that's a good. Oh, I just have a quick. I think that's just a really good, like saying about the like how it's similar to action films potentially for other people. That's a good. I didn't think about that. That's a good like way to think about it.
well, Matt, do you think if Hamilton was redone in the style of like the songs were done in the style of 3 6 Mafia or trap rap, that genre, you think you would give it a like an honest watch?
That was the thing that I was thinking about, and I was like, okay, that so has to be like the biggest counter argument of like, if I did like the music, could I watch a musical? And I think maybe yes, to a certain extent, because like I do like ABBA, and like Mamma Mia was, I was able to make it through it, so that's high regards for me at least. But at the same time, I will listen to The Summer by 3 6 Mafia, but if they had to break the whole flow of the movie just to like tell me that it's the summer and that's what they do in the summer, then it may be frustrating if something else is going on. So I think that's my biggest thing of like, it feels like the flow gets broken up. And I mean, I'm fine with like a long movie that kind of goes into detail or is kind of maybe confusing at times. Like I thought Barry Lyndon, the what's his face film, yeah, the Kubrick one, where that I feel like, I mean, not the
Oh.
exact same setting, obviously, but like it's still kind of old timey and disconnected, but you get to hear more interesting things about the characters um and like the way they express themselves, and they would have to be forced through when they're singing a song. So I would say, I mean, if there was a 3-6 Mafia musical, I'd watch that just because that sounds hilarious. But I don't think I would just be instantly in love with it.
Supposedly there is a Wu-Tang musical that has been written. So
Mm.
Wow.
The RZA.
exactly.
I've never seen Mamma Mia. I can't. This is usually like if I'm in a school office and there's a bunch of women my age, they're talking. This time it's like a flip on it. So I guess I'm gonna have to see it.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Matt, you might have to watch it again then.
Well, I did tell Andy and Justin that if the stars aligned and if we were all together, I would watch Hamilton with them. So I do want to like surrender some of my movie watching biases and just like go ahead and watch it and see how it is. But I'll have to have 911 on standby because a few blood vessels will be sure to be popped. I don't know, there's even like there's these guys on YouTube called Pretty Much It, and they do like commentaries of her movies, and they'll have these tracks where or the stuff that they post on YouTube is just like kind of the highlight clips of them. And I mean, I really enjoy pretty much all their stuff just because they make funny jokes no matter what you're watching, whether it's like a horror movie or like a Netflix instant release or something like that. But when they do like a musical, like I cannot bear to watch like any of those just because like my skin is crawling with annoyance of the bursting out of the song. So I want to try and get over that at least a little bit, or give it more of a chance, but hard to say.
All right. Would you say so? When you like, let's say you'll go to like the theater and you'll have a really good experience, or maybe a not so good experience, and then when you later rewatch it. So I guess the point of the question is I've had some rewatches where it's totally like 2001 is actually a good example where I watched a while ago and like just could not connect or find my way into that movie, and then me and Trey saw it I don't know, a few years later, and I was like all in, like it was amazing. I was like blown away. And I've also had the experience where I've had a good experience like in the theater, and then on later rewatch, it was just like, it's not really, not that it was like horrible, but like I feel like there's something about like that first watch when it's so exciting that like it's kind of hard to, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, what would you say? Are there any good examples of either experience that you have?
Okay, so I love Paddington Bear, and the first one was really good, and the second one was really good. And my daughter hates movies, and I was like, everyone will love this movie. The only other movie that she liked that I made her watch was Scott Pilgrim, and she did love that, so she trusted me. And so we were watching it, and she just walked out of the room in the first 10 minutes. And I know she's rude like that. And so I was like, this is amazing. You just hang in there a little bit, you know. Anyway, she left. And I watched a second time, and it didn't have the magic that I think you were talking about in that first one, but it did. It was still, I mean, it's not a deep movie, right? It's just kind of sweet. So it was still sweet, but it didn't have that magical first kind of watch to it.
Interesting. Yeah, Trey, you had a question before everything broke down.
Oh, well, I mean, it was just speculating that you wrote down the same question as me because you're a filthy rat bastard. But anyways, no. So I've had this experience multiple times, and with specifically two of like my favorite movies ever. One, well, The Master's a really interesting case for me because I watched that for the first time in like high school, and I like didn't understand it all. I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm crying. I don't understand this movie. It's not following the traditional like format that I'm used to. And then I rewatched it my sophomore year of like college, and it just like clicked with me. And ever since that, I've like probably rewatched it at least 2 more times since then. Um, it's just like, yeah, I think it's like your experience with watching movies and your experience in life kind of has a lot to weigh on certain films sometimes, and that's a good example of that. Because maybe it's just like I wasn't old enough to to kind of understand some of the themes going on in that. And another case of that is with Francis Ha, which is also like pretty much like a 5 star for me. Um, I've seen that 4 times, like throughout high school and college, and every time I feel as though I've gained like even more appreciation and connection out of that
Mm.
because of where I was in my life and the things that I was dealing with were, began to become very similar to what character Francis was dealing with in that film. So it's just a really interesting thing for me when that happens. So yeah.
Nice.
I would say, well, Trey definitely got to see my reaction to when this happened, where I watched Synecdoche, New York, and then I watched it with Trey again, probably 7 or 8 months later, and I really loved the film the first time, and Trey can probably speak to me being not as like elated about it the second time. And I think a lot of the magic or the wonder about how like just how weird the film gets as it goes on was lost on me after watching it a second time. Because I feel maybe there's like an element of reveal that goes on in that movie that makes it more entertaining when you're initially watching it. I mean, I typically do not really rewatch films at all because I'm basically like concerned about what you were talking about, Aaron, where it's like, well, if I really enjoyed it the first time, then I feel like I would probably not enjoy it as much on the follow up because there's like I already know what's going to happen, so it feels less potent to me. Maybe I should only do that on movies that I didn't really like, just for the sake of maybe I'll like it again the next time it swings around. But yeah, I'd say that happened to me once for the one time that I rewatched a movie. So I'll probably never rewatch anything again unless the stars align for something to make that happen. But that's not my style, really. So.
When I was an English teacher, I showed that Romeo plus Juliet thing. So like Baz Luhrmann thing. And I just showed it because like I was just done, right? So like I would watch it with the first period and I'd be like, I hate this. This is so obnoxious. Blah, blah, blah. Second period, third period, okay, and then I still hated it. And then the next year I did the same thing. And then I was like, yeah, I kind of like this. Oh, when it went through, and like by the third year I showed it, I was like, "You guys, you're in for such a treat," went on and that. And so it's just like, and that's a lot of watching it, and I didn't always sit there and watch it like riveted or whatever. I was always probably doing something else. But I think it's one of the few movies I can think of that I really changed my feeling about, and it is kind of a acquired taste or kind of obnoxious to be honest. But I like that idea. I know, like, I've seen plays where I got in an argument with this old guy I worked with I was like 22, and I was just like, that was so beautiful. I mean, the way they like survived the war. And he was like, God, that was like a trait, blah, 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 blah. And just like your experiences and where you are is so, it does completely inform your experience, right? And so I think that's a super valid way of looking at things. And I'm picking up Francis Ha at the library tomorrow. I'm excited. Yeah.
And
Sick.
is that the Baz Luhrmann? That's the one with like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Yeah, that's I'm kind of on because I've also seen it. I think maybe one at least once all the way through, maybe twice and a little bit of it. But um, yeah, like I mean, like you said, it's kind of there's not really it looks different. It's a very unique movie, and it's hard to, especially for someone maybe in high school or whatever, to kind of get in to it. But when I did recently do it for in one of my community college classes, like the whole point like of watching it was we were supposed to like find some like filmmaking technique there, and when I was forced to like analyze it like critically, I'd found some like some interesting some really smart filmmaking techniques going on. And I mean, while I can appreciate that that was there, it doesn't really change that it's not really my favorite movie. But it's just cool to like, yeah, when you notice like, despite your personal feelings, like, oh, there's like some solid work being done here. So yeah.
I would also kind of say to bounce off as a question. Um, do you guys think film should be? Do you think there should be like required film viewings in classes, the same that there's like required readings? And do you think there would be places in non-art classes to show films more regularly? Like, oh, we can still talk about a film in an English class because a lot of English is in a film and how it's presented is different, but it was still written down at some point. And
Hmm.
simultaneously, it doesn't have to be based on a book or based on Shakespeare or something. But do you think there are more places for films in education? And if so, how would you guys like want to implement that?
Hmm.
I would say 1,000% because if you're looking at a movie, you're using critical thinking, and so also I would hope, because I'm still kind of optimistic, that it would make people smarter and maybe there'd be less garbage movies because people would expect more, like, because, right, the more you watch and the more you think about it, your expectations are higher. So when you see something really crappy, you just kind of makes you angry. Like, man, really? You're just going to throw that? Because a lot of movies just perpetuate stereotypes, whether they're racist or gender related or whatever. But it reminds me, like, I really love the movie Gattaca, and I used to show it with this. We used to do this eugenics movement kind of thing with Mice and Men,
Hmm.
and the science teachers got mad because they're like, "That's our one movie. Get your hands off our one movie." So I was thinking about that, like, but how cool would that be? Like, if you had something in every kind of subject matter where, and it wasn't just babysitting. It was, you actually asked, like you said, I want you to really think about this. How does this tie to our questions about, how should we have a fully, genome kind of project, and should we mess with our genetics, whatever? I think that'd be really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm inclined also to agree. I guess one thing that I'm thinking about is, so is it like, because like on one hand, I think it would be worthwhile. Like there's like movies like you were talking about that like bring up interesting, I guess maybe moral or ethical or whatever conflicts. Um, but also, I guess I'm trying to think about: do we want to teach partially like the kind of film grammar or like film like how to read a film basically, or because I mean, a lot of schools already kind of show certain movies for the other way, right? To ones that really specifically highlight, um, yeah, just some, usually like a historical or whatever thing. But I think there's a lot, yeah, I think there could be a lot of worth to like, and that it's a hard thing too, because like there's a lot of quality movies that don't necessarily show off like the filmmaking, yeah, just techniques and I guess grammar or language or whatever. Um, I don't know. It's hard to because I can't. I'm trying to put myself in a point of like a high schooler or a middle schooler who's like being taught how to, read, like, okay, when they use this angles or when they zoom in or when they, like how what a cut is trying to communicate, like, yeah, I don't know. Because it's weird, like what films I think there was a post a while ago on that subreddit True Film, whereas a teacher was trying to put together like a curriculum for like a college class or whatever, and like asking what movies, show off certain filmmaking. And it's really, I don't know, it's an interesting, yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about for sure.
Well, I think you could almost take it like a step further, and like people got to know how to read, and they have to know how to write, and they also have to know how to like produce videos. I feel like that could be like a very real third option where like kids and everyone watch things and listen to things way more than they read. Now probably more than ever, and I assume permanently. So it'd make way more sense for people to understand how the media that they're being made is produced than not.
Sure.
And I think that'd make people a lot more aware of at least, I mean, it wouldn't make everyone be able to discern between what's real and what's fake, but I think if people are taught some devices at the very least, they can understand how media manipulates people or appeals to their senses. So, I could very well easily see, oh, let's add another core class to the curriculum of like video making, and just have kids make videos from a very early age and understand, yeah, these different zooms or pannings can convey different emotions, and people can have these skills as fundamentals to go into the current world, as opposed to writing, while incredibly valuable and important, and we still use every day to communicate. But that accounts for maybe 10% of all media people consume every day. Probably less. I mean, people have to read titles and stuff, but past that, they're watching, videos and stuff on the screen and news. So I think you could like accelerate that even further and just like make that into the curriculum.
Yeah, I also, while you were talking, it kind of reminded me as well, like even just not even just about like learning just the filmmaking, like just like a visual literacy, right? Like, like how to read, visuals, right? Like, I mean, that could kind of get into like just even like a photo, right? The composition. It's, like there are things that are pretty and, whatever, but like there's kind of like there's things going on behind the photo. Like they chose, a lot of decisions went in that make it more appealing for our eyes. And I think understanding that can be really, yeah, just really, really valuable.
Trey, as a person who has essentially a major of both of those things, what are your thoughts? I can really only imagine that you are pogging in your chair right now.
On just the general question here on
on the general question of movies in education, or as we're going further, making the core curriculum revolve more around visual media.
I'm kind of conflicted on it, I guess, in terms of thinking of classes outside of ones that are specifically focused on movies. Because I mean, if I'm thinking to all the times in any class in which a movie has been shown, it's always seen as like by sometimes myself and other students as like the cheat day, almost like the excuse to sit back. It's like, oh, we're not learning anything today. Because I think, and it's that's the thing, is like you'll have some students, and probably I don't know exactly how many, but it seems like a smaller number of them will actually be really committed to like, oh, we're watching a movie today, like I cannot wait to learn about this thing. While you'll have like this much larger number who is just like, oh, we're watching a movie today, so looks like we can just kind of phone it in on our academic abilities. Because some people, yeah, I guess like the movie is just seen in school is sometimes seen as just that excuse for like, okay, we're not learning today.
Mm,
Well, do you think that's
Uh,
because it's not normalized currently, where it's like, because yeah, people are like, oh, okay, I'll phone it in since it's a movie day, but when like a book is assigned, people aren't like, oh, goody, I can like flex my academic prowess because we're doing something that I deem as a credible form of artwork instead of a film, right? Like, kids aren't gonna like whatever they're assigned anyway. So, do you think if movies are normalized more as a form, people would be like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing today, and like I have to do what I've done in classes before, of like analyze this, pull something out of it, yada yada. And if it's built more into the curriculum, do you think people would accept it as more of a respectable medium for learning?
I think maybe. Um, I guess with that comes like, how do you do it in a way that is super academically engaging? Because all the experiences I've had with that is like, either you just sit there and watch it, and then the Hermiones of the class like chat about what they thought was really dope about it, or like what's going on, or it's like you get a worksheet and it's like at what it's like literally just a trivia thing. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
what did this person do at this point in the movie? Like, oh, who said Luke, I'm your father? Blah blah blah, stuff like that. You know. So if there isn't more and a better way to engage it as a part of the curriculum and like include it within there, then yes, I'm all for that. As for right now, I'm not sure I can super like imagine how you would do that.
yeah, I think I see both, and I really do agree. Yeah, with kind of both sides. And one good example is I took a class um, in high school. I think my senior year. I can't remember what it was called, but it had a lot to do with like kind of watching movies a little more. I mean, it was a high school class, and it felt like it was one of those things where like the teacher kind of fought for it to be like he wanted that class to be a thing, but like the reality was that most of the students that saw like, oh, a movie class, that'll be easy, and I took it like, oh, it's cool, like I can like I was coming in like excited to see cool movies and like talk about them. And I think one of the issues, so for example, with a most when most people are raised not to, they just like, oh, cool, like a movie, but there's not really, whatever, like it's just a movie, like there's not a lot of critical thought going on. Um, so when you join a class like that and you just kind of put it on, so here's basically the main example is like they in middle of class he just threw on the projector screen Citizen Kane for one of the movies, which like, okay, yeah, it's a pretty, it's going to have a lot of examples of good filmmaking and whatever, but when you are literally in your desk and like, the light from outside is coming in and it's like that's not really a place to start with a bunch of people who, like it wasn't set up for a good, and it's not even, you don't even have time to watch all of it, right? It was just like uh an hour long class or whatever. So on one hand, I think if you give a good setup and like, okay, we're gonna watch blank movie, look for this, pay attention to this, that, and the other. I think it certainly can be done well, um, but I think, yeah, it depends a lot on movie choice, because just plopping them in front of Citizen Kane is, some kids are gonna be fine, but like most, I imagine that's not the best starting point. Um, yeah, I think I like that a lot.
I had this little oh, I can't remember what they called it. It's like advisory or something stupid like that, and we were supposed to talk about whatever. And I was like, I don't really feel like I can just have kids walk into my room and be like, hey, I just want to talk about how you feel and like don't do drugs and whatever. I'm like, could I do a movie, kind of a connect, like I would show movies all year that were like movies about growing up. And this was when I lived in the Bay Area, and the principal was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm like, okay, great. So I was doing that, and I had a whole bunch of kids, and I was like, okay, you guys, we watched Cinema Paradiso, we watched whale rider and yeah, I kind of forgot about some of the scenes. But anyways, and so during the open house night, a parent came in and she's like, "Is this a class where she watches movies?" And I was like, "No, this is where we study film." And then she just started laughing, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that did sound pretty pretentious." But like, it's not really American culture to.
Yeah.
Right? We think it's like the cheapest, easiest thing, but it isn't just movies with The Rock in it or whatever. And so you're fighting a big battle. But I like that idea of like starting it earlier and not necessarily like teaching everything, but film does have its own vocabulary, and we are manipulated by images constantly. So I just love that idea. I think that it could be really cool to get out of the babysitting film kind of idea and into the why is this your favorite movie? Let's look at it. That kind of thing. So
yeah, the starting early is probably pretty important there, because if they have some concept, because like I even in high school, I like that was right when I started to realize that I even was like passionately interested in movies in that way. And like I didn't even like realize that it was like a thing, like before I was right there with the rest of the Transformers crowd. And yeah, it's just like an interesting thing to look back, and like I slowly learned so much. It was like, yeah, it totally shifts how you view them.
do you guys have a movie that like someone has said like you've got to see whatever, and you've never seen it? Like you're just like, I'm not even gonna bother to watch that. And like, can you think of what that movie is and like why you won't watch it, and who recommended it?
Well, right now there's one that someone recommended to me. It's called A Serious Man, and I do think it would be worth my time. And it's, I don't know, the movie. It's a Coen Brothers movie, and it's about like a lot of it has to do with like the Jewish, I guess, culture and like people in that, I don't know, world. But so I would certainly relate and find. I imagine I would get a lot out of it, maybe potentially more than this person did. I just, you kind of need to be. If you're not in the mood, you're not in the mood, and like, yeah, I don't know. It's whatever. Also, the person I'm referring to Trey.
He's lying. He's not actually referring to me.
I mean, maybe it has happened to me, not in like a personal way. I think I don't know how many movies that I have seen that like Trey's recommended to me, but they're certainly on my watch list. I think maybe overall there's like very major movies that I have not seen that like the world wants you to watch, but it feels maybe not as necessary. Like, I don't know if I'll ever watch The Shining, where it's like, okay, I kind of know what happens already. I've seen probably the bulk of all the major scenes, and I spoke about how I I don't like to rewatch things because I feel like that withdraws all the punch it had for the initial watching. So I know that there will be stuff if I do eventually watch it, like that will feel new, but at the same time, it's like, okay, is it worth watching this movie versus something completely new? So I think that's my biggest struggle for those movies that seem like they have so much exposure already to the public eye that like, should I even bother to watch it at this point? Like, will I get anything further out of it? So I think that's my biggest thing. Is my mother... Okay. You were like frozen on my screen, your video is Mom, but that's okay. Oh, now I'm frozen. Did my
I've never seen Frozen.
True, I've not seen Frozen either.
Yeah, you're frozen for me as well. I don't know.
I heard Macbeth
Weird.
and died.
Did Trey leave?
I'm right here.
Okay. Do you think come to mind?
I think I just want to say Shawshank Redemption, even though nobody's actually recommended it to me. Just because I really, I really don't have like super huge interest in it. Mostly because it's like been touted as, or that's the IMDb canon, right? Is that it's been touted as the greatest movie ever made by the experts over at IMDb or something. When yeah, like I mean, I will probably watch it eventually, but I feel like it is so hyped up that it will fail to get to that point for me, especially with all the other like amazing things that I've seen, you know. So that's one. And then I guess the other one that comes to mind that maybe is not exactly what somebody would expect in this conversation is like a movie that is very obviously like not good. My family, or at least my grandmother, which is like the weirdest thing, is that she a few times in the few times that I've seen her recently, she has like told me that I need to see Rambo Last Blood, which is like nothing I would have ever expected out of her, and especially because the movie itself is like him going to Mexico and like fucking killing people, especially when that side of my family is Mexican. So it's like I like what
It's called representation, bro.
yeah. I was just like, because I've heard people like call that movie like racist, obviously, and I like just for my grandmother of all people to recommend it to me, especially like a violent action movie like that, because I've seen all the other Rambo movies and I know like, I mean the Rambo movie before that is like one of the most goriest movies I think I've ever seen in my life, but I don't want to watch that for just for a few different reasons, and one of them, the main reason, is that it just doesn't seem good. Like it just seems like garbage. But it's more interesting to me that my grandmother recommended that to me.
Amazing.
Very
I love that.
Yeah. Kind of surprised you have not seen Shawshank. I guess I saw that in class, so I enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, but I think because that was like one of the first, I guess I'll just say, yeah, it was one of the first movies I've ever seen. I think it works well because it's like, I didn't even know you could do that in a movie, or like, it's crazy how this story is, where maybe if I were to watch it now, it might feel a little bit tiresome because everything has then replicated it from there on out. So it maybe became a little bit too legendary for its own good. I mean, that in the same class, I also watched the old newspaper man one that you're talking about before in Citizen Kane.
Oh, Citizen Kane.
Like that
yeah, the old newspaper man movie where, yeah, it like everything was so groundbreaking, and started watching it at the time. It was really neato bandito, but because it set the stage for everything else, it's like, okay, I've seen other pieces of video before, so this doesn't feel like anything super new or intuitive. So I think I run into that issue as well, where it's like, if something was so legendary, it changed the landscape of film, then if you've seen other stuff that's come after it, it's sometimes hard to give it the respect it probably initially deserved. But you can't win them all.
You know, that's actually a thing that I've relatively recently formed an opinion on, is like, there's those movies that are kind of like landmark movies, right? Like that, yeah, like Citizen Kane, like it was revolutionary at the time, and like that's cool and all, but like I guess the one example that kind of prompted this thought process is I saw The Matrix, which is I guess like a landmark action movie, and it was good. Like it's obviously worthy of praise, but like just because it was like revolutionary doesn't like it's worth noting, but like it's got to be worthy and quality on its own, merits. And so like while yeah, like Citizen Kane has a lot going for it, and I mean I haven't seen it I think since that one time. So I'm less talking about the individual quality, but more like yeah, I mean it's hard to yeah, when you're watching it, you don't care about I mean, for the most part, like you're not like, oh wow, that was so revolutionary at the time. Like you're in the story, right? So
Mhm.
I was sort of thinking about that too. Like, context is everything. Like, where we are in our own lives when we see something, but also like you just go through an art museum and you might look at something and be like, whatever, that's like 3 stripes of paint, But I think you have to put it in the context of the time and saying like, nobody did that. That's a complete comment against whatever realism or whatever. But
mhm.
this summer I kind of got into like the French New Wave stuff, and I watched Breathless,
Mm.
the Jean-Luc Godard, and it like you said, like it was a little bit like, what? And I thought, okay, wait a minute, he broke all the rules, and there's no like tropes about sentimental relationships, and the way he filmed things and whatever. So I think maybe the older I get, the more I am like, no, that's asking too much for something to last like 60 years and be absolutely, God, stand on its own amazing, when what they did was to go against absolutely everything. And so I actually really enjoyed it, thinking about that and
Mm.
everything that came before it. And so, um,
Right,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think that's
Hmm.
like a two-way street, and a lot of times where I think your opinion is equally as valid. Where if you want to respect it for whatever the time frame was, that's awesome, and you can go back and transport yourself in that way. But also, if the movie doesn't ring true with how you're experiencing life right now, I think it's perfectly valid for you to just dunk on the movie, and you can hate it or dislike it as much as you want. And I think that happens with art a lot, like you were saying, where the art piece can be something incredibly simple, but its backstory may be a lot more crazy. And I think like sculptures and paintings can maybe get a bit more of a pass because you can't really like the piece of art can tell the entire story in some sort of way, but like I think it's a movie's job in a certain amount to give you some of that context at the very least. So like what's going on, even in a movie like Avatar, let's just say, where everything's like CG, that can tell you at least a little bit about like 2010 or 2008 or whenever the movie was released. So like, okay, yeah, this is cutting edge technology, and this is what we're doing. So that can speak a little bit about the era itself, but I think like whatever opinion you form about something is more or less reasonable, and I think especially for a movie, you shouldn't have to do further research outside of it to make it more worthwhile. And I would say maybe that's the only time like an art form maybe is different for me, where like I'd say yeah, if you're looking at something that's in a museum, I think maybe to give it a fair chance you should maybe read more about it. But I mean, it's your opinion. I guess if you can go in and say that you hate this and you can make it on your own, then you can go and say that. Like, it doesn't really matter, but I think it can like super depend. Like, not every movie should say like, oh, you had to be there in order for it to be cool. Or maybe that's just like a style of movie that I like, where it's like I like movies that can stand alone and have this impact. But
Mm-hmm.
that's my spiel.
Sure. I don't know if everybody's already seen this, but Taika Waititi, Hunt for the Wilder People. I keep telling Matt to watch that, and it's really good.
I did enjoy Boy
Yeah,
a lot.
I saw that one a while ago. It's a good one.
Aaron,
So wait,
what is your movie suggestion for the people, Aaron, or for us?
Oh man. I'm looking at my secret site. Um, what would I suggest? A universal, like, y'all should see. I mean, I guess the one that comes to my mind, even though I know Trey has seen it, Dog Day Afternoon is not one that gets a ton of like talk, or it's not like up in the echelon, but it's really, really, really good, and it's one of my favorites. So
Right. My recommendation is a movie called Wildlife, and it came out in 2018. It's a really interesting story about family separation in the 1960s, told from the view of like a 14-year-old child. So it's really something.
Let's see. I don't think any of you guys have seen City of God. It's pretty well touted throughout the internet, but that is one that I would like to talk about with any of y'all. It is very interesting. So kind of a classic answer, but none of you have seen it. So I'd recommend y'all get on that train and watch it.
yeah, I definitely want to see that one.
Were there any other topics that we didn't get to that you guys wanted to chit chat about?
Well, I did have one question left that we could talk about.
Sure.
And I think we've touched upon this in the past before, but why don't we go about it, run the gauntlet on it again?
For the record.
What does a movie have to do to win you over? Let's say you're at the movie's ice cream shop and there's a whole bunch of things going on there. But what's the one flavor in its over to really like catch your eyes and be like, okay, hell yeah. If you could pinpoint that, of course, because sometimes it's very tricky, but you know.
Very sneaky, very wacky. Yeah, that's a hard one for me. I don't when I think about it, I start to just go very general. Like I'm like, oh well, I just like really like interesting character decisions, like good characters, but that's a little
vague.
Yeah. So I don't know. Do you ask that because you think you have one in mind? It's like the big juice.
I mean, maybe. I just wanted to hear Matt's answer because I know what it is already.
Yeah, what is it, Trey?
You don't have car crash in it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm trying to.
It's so funny.
Looking at my favorite film list, I'm trying to remember which ones do and do not have a car crash.
Have you seen Mad Max Fury Road?
I've not.
You're gonna need 2 chairs for that one.
I do think a lot of great movies involve a car crash in a certain extent, for sure. So yeah, at least I'm like, I want to say more on it, but at the same time, like, I don't want to give examples because like the car crash is the best part in these movies. So like, why even talk about them? I don't want to ruin it for anyone. So I just think a car crash adds like a good amount of action to a movie while also keeping it realistic. And I'm not saying the car has to explode into a great large fireball, but just it adds some derby car carnage that is well needed for a film, and I think it adds a strong release as well. So I think most movies with car crashes in them are pretty strong.
Yeah, I think I like.
Oh, I will never find this not funny. Like, it's such a, like, car crashes is so, like, I really don't get it, but I like almost do, you know, like, and also I'm about to like go through your letterbox because like there's a few movies that are coming to mind, but I don't want to because like everyone like Mad Max, like obviously there's a car crash in there. There's actually only two though. That was a meme, but like now I'm really there's some movies that are coming to mind that like holy crap, good quality car crashes, and also it's I think it's interesting too because like yeah, like it's a really like often they're kind of used, you know, like the characters just driving la la la, and then like it just like halts. It like it just is a huge. It's like this insane, you know, out of nowhere thing. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just like it's kind of yeah, it's a weird like because like usually they don't, you know, like when you're following the story, you know, they don't you don't leave in the parts like oh like fucking and then a lightning bolt hit my house out of like you know random life occurrences like that don't usually make it into movies so like
Unless it's a Donnie Darko, but yeah.
oh um yeah so I guess it is there's something to it you know little map I might make a 10-hour video essay about it for you.
I'll definitely make a list on Letterboxd of best car crash movies, but
I really love the car crash in Solaris. It kind of catches you by surprise.
Yeah, but I mean, there's kind of
Tarkovsky had that idea. I mean, come on.
there's almost like a crash-ish scene. It's like a astronaut crash, but same sort of
I mean,
thing.
I'm talking about the car crash scene, man. You know what I'm talking about.
There's not a car crash scene in Solaris. You're yanking my chain, aren't you?
I'm completely serious.
No, you're lying. You're the imposter, dude. But I would agree if you're in
our cold open for the fucking video now.
Our what?
Our cold open for the video before you play the regular.
This is the intro. But I would say you're right, Aaron, in that it like plays with the human mortality aspect a little bit, where it's like, okay, yeah, these characters are fragile and they're human and something weird can happen, but like a car crash is like just common enough and just like a good enough tool that like it won't feel like it's totally shoehorned in there, or at least when used well, it's not like a giant crux of like, oh, this car crash happened, now we gotta go save the princess, but like this car crash happened and here's how it's affecting the story and the characters and yada yada. So that's my spiel about the car crashes in movies.
Man, I need you to watch well, I haven't even seen it, but we talked about it in my cold cinema class like 4 years ago. There's this movie called Crash by David Cronenberg. You have to.
I'll watch it for the culture. What was your key movie trait that you need in a film, Trey?
I guess like I'm not super clear on that either. But if I really had to say like as maybe like basic as it sounds, it's like moments in which the editing and the cinematography like really like are apparent, but not like annoyingly so in a way, or that they're just used in a way that they coalesce. There's this very specific moment in the Meyerowitz stories that just every time I'm always so excited for it. It's like you ever seen that picture of like the fucking dudes like all sitting on a couch like going yeah, like that's my moment for that movie.
Well, I don't want to.
You gotta put that on screen when I say that too.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Wait, have you seen it?
The dudes, I know the dudes on the couch that you're talking about, but I do not know the movie.
So, Trey, I'll say it without, ruining Matt's life. But is it the part? So it's like towards the end of the movie, and he's back talking to his dad.
Yeah, it's that moment.
Oh yeah, I just recently, yeah, that's that's a nice, really cool moment.
It's dope.
and then like his dad like shits all everywhere, right? And then like
Starting shit and cum. Yeah.
Aaron, any other questions that you had to round out this little movie chit chat, pity pat?
It was kind of. I mean, I wrote something else down, but I don't really. Maybe another time.
For round 2.
Oh wait, also, I just saw that you had seen No Country for Old Men. That was one of the car crashes that I was like, thought you would enjoy.
Yeah, the movie does have a car crash. Maybe it's not as like climactic as some other films, but it is in there. That does aid its score, even though I wasn't as in love with it as you. It's all right.
Your review is like good flick with alluring aspects. I love that.
That may be higher than I maybe should have, than I truly felt, but that's for me to decide and you to find out. Okay. Any other parting words? This is a pretty hefty episode.
Yeah, I forgot how freaking long it's been going, but it's been enjoyable.
Thanks for watching.
Are we gonna do a hey? See you guys. That's one for the moviegoers out there.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to try to get to about 10,000 likes on this YouTube video. Please, it'll really help the channel out. Yeah, so then we can finally get our NordVPN sponsor.
All right. I will see y'all in the next one.
Yeah.
Bye.